What's up, my fellow small business supporters? I'm Savvy. Welcome back to Savvy Writes Books, the channel where we talk about books and business, where today we are going to be talking about a business guru that we have covered before on this channel. He goes by the name of Andy Frisella. Mr. Andy Frisella, creator of the 75 Hard Challenge, founder of the first Phorm supplement company, which some have said resembles an MLM structure. In some cases, not in all. I understand that there are a lot of athletes that are sponsored by First Phorm that do not participate in an MLM structure, but others who have represented the brand in the past have said, yeah, it had some MLM vibes. If you want background information on all of that, then please check out the other video that I did on Andy Frisella and his background and diving into First Phorm and diving into the 75 Hard Challenge and some of the dangers of that challenge, because if you guys remember, on my second channel, Your Morning Guru, by the way, we stream there every single morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Check it out. It's linked in the description below. On that channel, at the beginning of 2022, we tried the 75 Hard Challenge and reported on it, and it wasn't really for me, even though I'm someone who absolutely loves working out and trying new challenges and things like that. That particular challenge was not for me, and I dive into why in my other video, so check it out, linked up in the cards. However, I recently saw on Andy Frisella's podcast, which is called Real AF, that's right, because his initials are AF, and he is the real AF, and he's talking about being real AF. He is unfiltered, he is uncensored. This man is out here to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So, Andy Frisella's podcast, Real AF, just released a new episode, which is about fighting wokeness in school. Which is very interesting. Now, you may remember that in the previous video I did on Andy Frisella, I talked a little bit about his COVID denialism a little bit of anti-vax stuff being spread on Instagram as a treat, a little bit of that kind of stuff. Lots of controversies going on with him. And now I wanted to check out this podcast, the whole thing about fighting wokeness in school. What does he mean by this? I really hate the way that the generations older than me, I don't want to be one of those millennials who's like, I hate everyone older than me. I think that's fucking stupid. But I do hate how some older generations have kind of taken this term woke, which was a slang term, and they've basically expanded it to mean anything that bothers me. Anything someone does that bothers me is because they're woke. They're trying to force their ideology on me. They're trying to take away my right to force my ideology on them. But I can't judge Andy too hard without actually listening to what he says in his podcast, episode number 343 of the Real AF podcast, where he talks about fighting wokeness in school. Now, I am a former teacher myself. I am a teacher who is a gay, and because of that, I am curious what exactly he wants to fight in schools, because a lot of times when people talk about fighting wokeness in school, they usually mean, I don't want my kid's teacher to be gay. I don't want my kid's teacher who's a woman to marry other women. I don't want my kid's teacher who's a man to marry other men. I don't want to see any pride flags in the classroom. I don't want them to learn about gay history. I also don't want them to learn about anything negative about America that happened in the past, even though history is bloody and gruesome and awful because humans are terrible. We're not gonna learn about that. I want my kids' education to be completely sanitized. That's what they mean by it a lot. However, maybe that's not what Andy means. Maybe Andy has a fantastic point that I've never heard before. Can't know until we listen to the episode. So let's do it. Alright everyone, I don't want to delay too much further, so welcome back to my channel. Welcome for the first time if you're new. Don't forget to subscribe, all of that stuff. Let's get this podcast going.
Get you some nuts.
There was lots of memes.
Makes me wonder if I should take up lesbianism.
Chicago. You guys asked for it.
So the episode description says, in today's episode, Andy answers your questions on how to deal with certain family members who ask for money once you achieve financial success. Okay. If you should ever consider making one of your top employees a partner, we're probably going to skip over those topics. And the best way to revolt against the woke school system. This is what I want to listen to. I'll have some interesting things to say about this, I think. All right, Andy, take it away, bud.
You ever heard that? That's the name of the show, okay? You submit your questions, and I answer them. You can submit your questions at askandy@andyfrisella.com. Please make them not stupid. Sometimes when you tune in, we have a different format. Okay, sometimes it's Q&AF. Sometimes it's CTI, which is Cruise the Internet, and that's where DJ and I throw up all over the headlines. Wait, I meant we throw up headlines.
That was kind of funny. We throw up all over the headlines. I mean, we throw up the headlines. Submit your questions, make them not stupid. I mean, I like puns. I'm a sucker for puns, so the throwing up thing was kind of funny. However, the whole make your questions not stupid, you can tell from the fact that Andy's over here with a big piece of tape on his mouth that says society. You can tell he's pretty edgy, right? He's an edgy boy. He doesn't want society silencing him. That's why there's duct tape over his mouth that says society. Got the whole tough guy persona. It's okay. I sometimes have a little bit of a tough guy persona too, but I don't want to delay this for too long because I want to finish this before the edible hits, dude.
And then we make fun of them. And we talk about the lessons to be learned for society, and then the Q&A kind of fits together like a puzzle with
we live in a society.
that, right? We identify the problems in the world, and then we teach you how to be better individually, and then you go out and fix the world. It's genius.
That's right, Andy. I am ready to fix the world. And I love what he said there, too. This is how you know that Andy Frisella is a true capitalist, because he's saying that we each individually have the power to fix the entire world. Fuck the system. That's right, Andy.
Sometimes don't agree with, and we have conversations to find that common ground and the solutions of what we need to help.
I will say, I appreciate that Andy says outright he likes to have conversations with people he doesn't agree with. I do, too. If you guys have seen, I've done debates on my channel. I've done debates, especially on Your Morning Guru. I bring on people I disagree with all the time. I'm listening to Andy, who I disagree with on a lot of things right now. So, yeah, respect for that, man. Respect.
To make the world a better place, because that is really the underlying theme of what I'm about, okay, and what the show's about. All right, everything I do, for the most part, makes people better. All right.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Because when I was growing up, bro, it was always we could be anything we want. It didn't matter what the color you were. It didn't matter where you came from. Everybody's supposed to get along, and we had it there for a minute where it was getting on the right track.
Yeah.
What moment was that specifically? When was everything on the right track? Here's the thing. I think what Andy's kind of talking about here is how a lot of people, and I hear this a lot from Gen X and the boomers, I hear this a lot where people say, okay, when we were growing up, we were taught that the way to end racism and sexism and homophobia and all of these types of prejudice is for everyone to be treated equally, to treat everyone equally, to not treat anyone different. And I agree. I don't think that I think there's a miscommunication. I think what's happening, maybe that's just my idealistic way of pursuing things. I tend to be very idealistic and assume everyone has good intentions. I think a lot of people may be just miscommunicating, because I don't think anyone would argue that we should treat people differently based on immutable characteristics. I think most of us outside of people who are like super evil probably agree that prejudice and discrimination are wrong. I think what a lot of people are saying now, and where this whole idea comes from that we need to be educating people about equality, is not necessarily that we shouldn't treat everyone equally or that we should give someone else a special advantage or anything, but more so that we should acknowledge that there are issues that are still affecting people. That by just saying treat everyone equally and then we can move on, it doesn't do much to acknowledge the things that get perpetuated over time. So this is an example I like to give when it comes to sexism in the workplace or something like that. For example, a lot of people talk about, okay, the wage gap. The wage gap, the earnings gap, the career gap, whatever you want to call it. There's generally two sides to this debate where someone on one side will say, women only earn 77% of what men earn, and then someone on the other side will say, well, that's due to the choices that women make, and shouldn't we be treating everyone equally and not giving people special advantages? The problem with those mindsets is that it's ignoring the point of, yes, we should be treating everyone equally. Nobody should be getting special treatment. However, at the same time, to just say that without backing it up with any action ignores looking at the causes of why that might happen in the first place and how it is systemically advantageous to employers to promote men over women because men generally don't have a risk of getting pregnant, things like that, and that people don't have a risk of their bottom line, and how that's baked into the system of you need money to survive, and how it all kind of ties together and feeds into each other. So that's not me saying that I think that women should be given special advantages at work. It's more so me saying that by just doing this blanket, just treat everyone the same statement and not being willing to explore and acknowledge how those inequalities came to be, it's not going to do a lot to repair the things that are still causing them to happen further, if that makes sense. One thing I see people talking about when it comes to racism is there's generational trauma. So if you want to look back a couple decades, there was the whole redlining thing, right? Where in a lot of cases, a lot of Black families were blocked out of being able to buy real estate in predominantly white neighborhoods. So even if we want to say there's no laws forcing people to segregate, there should be equal opportunity for everyone, the fact that a couple generations ago people were blocked out of having those same opportunities based on race means that they weren't able to build up as much financial wealth over time. And this is not everyone, this is just averages across the board, not being able to build up as much financial wealth, meaning that when, I don't think this should be a surprise to anyone, when your parents are less wealthy, you're generally likely to grow up to have more struggles and to not have as many opportunities or to have a harder time getting into college. And it creates a cycle. I think we've all heard about the cycle of poverty and how those cycles tend to perpetuate. And again, so that's not saying treat people differently, but it's saying let's examine these situations and figure out how we got here in the first place and figure out if there are still things that are affecting people rather than just saying, go forth, every man for themselves. That's how I personally see it. I think that there's a difference between that and saying we should treat people differently. I just think it's an overly simplistic view to break it down into treat people the same or treat people different. That's how I see it.
We don't have a place in America for communist ideology. And I do agree with not supporting companies that support that, because I think we're free to be anything we want in America except communists.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
If you're free to be anything you want, you should also be free to be a communist.
Knowledge.
I'm not a communist, but I'll die on this hill that anyone should be allowed to have any ideology they want. America's a free country, dude. If you don't want to support companies that have communist ideology, then don't. It's a free market. Spend your money where you want to. But everyone's free to be what they want. That's a really weird thing to say, unless that was a joke.
I'm funny how? I mean, funny like I'm a clown. I amuse you. I make you laugh. I'm here to fucking amuse you.
I'm a little bit high.
Truth. And so I don't know. I'm torn on it though.
Yeah.
You know, I feel sort of politically homeless because like I don't feel that either side is truly representing what real American freedom and what the founding fathers really intended for this to become.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we both know that's intentional, right? Like that's on purpose. You know what I'm saying? Because like, and that's one of the tenets of communism. Like, if you can alienate literally everybody, and they did that through the all or nothing mentality, right? Like, if you call yourself a conservative, it's all or nothing. You have to believe in all of this shit over here. And
that's a problem with the conservatives.
Yeah.
Okay, so outside of the weird, like, this is communist propaganda shit that I completely disagree with, I think that they're a little off the rails with that. But I think I can agree with this point on how when people want you to choose a side politically, they expect you to be all or nothing. That a lot of, conservatives will say, they'll do this purity culture thing where it's like, oh, you're a capitalist, that's great. Oh, but you think abortion should be legal. Ooh, you're a murderer, we need to get you out of here. Or you have this similar thing on the left. You see a lot more of that with they do this purity kind of thing as well sometimes where it's like, oh, you said something that could have been misconstrued, you made a joke that was hurtful to other people and no apology is ever good enough. And that's not, I mean, I don't know, I guess people would consider me a leftist. I don't think the political system should be two sides. That's never what I've thought. But I guess if you had to ask me based on how they're defined right now, I guess I'd probably be a leftist because I'm a gay feminist who wants universal health care, so I don't know what else I'd be. But also, you guys know I have issues with the two-party system in the US. I think it's inherently flawed. So I think I can agree with them on that, at least.
It's the same thing on the left.
I know. It's
right?
a problem with both these core groups. Like, bro.
It's also what would make both fail.
Yeah, I know.
That's
I know.
That would be the
but I
bias.
also think we're at a...
So I think if I came on Andy's podcast and I disagree with him on a lot of things, I think that could be one of our points where we finally agree, where it's like, yeah, man, having it be broken down into this binary of one side or the other, all or nothing, it's not a real good way to facilitate really figuring out the best solutions forward together and collaborating. I would agree. It's kind of hard because the world just keeps seeming to get worse and worse and worse right now, and everything is always so life or death in the moment. It's almost like there's never a moment for anyone to stop and breathe and try to figure things out, and it really is kind of difficult because of that.
Andy, I'm a high school student trying to be a voice for those who don't agree with the woke school system. What can I and other students do to try and reverse this woke agenda they're pushing in my school?
Okay, so that was the question that he's being asked. One of the audience members called in with that question. So, I mean, I find it interesting that there's a high school student using the word woke in this way. I guess, it transcends age. I guess there's some teenagers who use it this way too. When I think of that, I think of the people like Ben Shapiro who have co-opted slang to, instead of, meaning something real, to mean like literally anything I disagree with. But I think I'm going to need to see a definition of what this person means, because it's hard, because I don't want to make assumptions. I don't want to build a straw man to argue against. I don't want to be like, oh, this student is just against teaching about slavery, or against teaching about World War II, or against letting people, have a picture of their same gender spouse in the classroom or whatever. That's what I have seen people use it to refer to, but I don't want to make an assumption, because I don't want to argue against a point that no one's making. So I really hope that specifically they define what is being meant by this. So, okay, Andy, what is this system and how can we fight it?
Just live it, dude. Live an authentic life of resistance.
Resistance to what?
When people say woke shit around you, like when your teacher says woke shit, raise your hand and say that's not.
For example, what? Like when your teacher says what? That's the thing, you need to be specific. Like when they're saying woke shit, like is your teacher actively saying, I am recruiting you for the Communist Party? Who is coming to the Communist Party recruitment? Or is the teacher saying something like, maybe the teacher's a woman and says, this summer I'm going on a trip with my wife. And it's like, oh, that's lesbians, that's not okay, that's too much ideology. Like, which one is it? Those are two very extremely different examples, and then there's a lot of room in the middle. So I'm gonna need to know what you mean when the teacher says what, Andy?
Not true.
Right.
You don't have to be angry.
Yeah.
You don't have to do what they do. You don't have to scream and yell. You don't have to throw a fit. You don't got to fucking protest. All you got to do is just call it out every time it shows up.
So every time what shows up? I don't disagree with if your teacher says something, raise your hand and challenge it. I think that's part of learning, especially in high school and college years, to raise your hand and challenge what someone's saying. Not in a rude way, of course. Don't like say, you're wrong to the teacher. But I don't think there's anything wrong with asking questions and wanting to learn more. That's how I learned a lot of things in college, by raising my hand and saying, okay, I hear you're saying this. What about this situation? Is that true in this situation? Some people I've heard say this instead. How would that be? Like, challenging that and asking questions, I think, is a wonderful way to get an education and to learn to think critically. I completely agree. But I need to know, like, I'm having really a hard time visualizing this situation without constructing a straw man based on what I've seen before. So I'm going to need to know, like, if the teacher says something, you raise your hand and say, that's not true. What if what the teacher said was true? How would you like, I don't think Andy's giving very good advice at all here.
And you're going to be called a problem, and you'll probably be called difficult, especially in high school, because the schools are super fucking woke.
Yeah.
But bro,
Woke in what way?
more and more kids.
I skipped ahead to this section of the podcast. Maybe I'll go back and see if he says more earlier about what it is.
Are waking up to what's been happening.
Wait, if they're waking up, isn't that being woke? Isn't that where the whole term woke comes from? Meaning being awoken, being awake to things? So if you're now saying they're waking up, wouldn't the wokeness have been transferred back to you, Andy?
And they are like, dude, we get tons and tons of emails from high school students who are like in that exact same
boat,
scenario.
yeah.
And you're not alone. There's lots of, that's even actually great verification right there. Dude, we get hundreds of fucking emails from kids that say the same fucking thing.
Mm-hmm.
They say what? That they disagree with things their teacher says? Like what?
All you guys have to do is be polite and say, well, actually, that's not true.
Right.
This is what's true.
Right.
Or question them.
I agree with question them. I think it's generally, if you're going to raise your hand and say, that's not true because of this, you're going to come off looking like the Ben Shapiro-ass kid in class. People are going to find you annoying. I don't think there's anything wrong with being difficult if it's in pursuit of truth or whatever, but I think it's a very different conversation to raise your hand and say, hey, I have a question about this. I've heard this. Is this true as well? How does this work in this situation? Just asking questions, trying to gain more information, even asking, where did you get that information from? Can I read more about this? Where do these ideas come from? Digging deeper and deeper into where everything comes from is a great thing for education. I think being a high school student and raising your hand and just being like, that's wrong. Like, dude, I was cocky as shit in high school. I would have said so much shit in high school that would have been incorrect because I would have just raised my hand and be like, actually, it's like this. When your brain is still a little undeveloped when you're a teenager, you have a very oversimplified view of things. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of the learning process, which is why asking questions is a good thing. But again, I'm a little confused here because I've been in the situation of being a teacher. I've taught creative writing classes for kids. I've had kids raise their hands and ask me questions and ask me, why are things like this? Can I do something a little different from what everyone's doing? It makes me think, it makes me pause and say, okay, well, let's examine why this is this way. Let's think about why this is this way. I think that teaching is a wonderful place to encourage kids to ask more questions. And I think the best teachers are the ones who encourage that line of questioning and thinking. I don't think raising your hand and saying you're wrong is a good way to facilitate discussion on either end.
Why would you say that when it could be like this and this and this?
Right.
Right? And like, dude, engage these people.
Andy, can you be specific? Just this and this and this. Can you give one example? I wish the kid who wrote in, the kid's a kid who wrote in asking this question. I'm also wondering, because when you're a kid, are you being indoctrinated by your teacher? Are you being indoctrinated by your parents? Are you being indoctrinated by the internet? To an extent, we're all a product of our surroundings and our environments. No one's a truly independent free thinker because none of us grew up in complete solitude or isolation. But I don't know.
These people, because they have no true logical or statistical data to really make sense of whatever they believe,
which people specifically?
The minute you call them, they will go to fucking names.
Emotional.
Okay,
shit,
so when they go to, well, that's racist, or that's misogynistic, or that is...
What people? Are you talking about the teachers? And when they say what? Okay, I've been a teacher, and I have been challenged by students. And when students have challenged me, I've never once gone to, well, that's racist, that's misogynistic. No, instead you continue the line of questioning with students. Maybe if this kid has teachers who are really sick of dealing with his shit, like maybe, I don't know.
Fucking sexist, or that's patriarchy, or that's
you just don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Listen, you just don't know.
Right.
All of those.
I agree that throwing around concepts and just saying that is this concept is generally not the best for a productive conversation, because they can sometimes be thought stoppers. Like, there's nothing wrong with calling something racist or sexist if that's what it is, but I think that there's also more to it if you're in a position of wanting to educate people. If you're a teacher and your goal is to educate, if a student says, like, for example, what Andy was saying earlier, like, what if a student raises his hand in class and says, well, okay, why do we have programs to try to get more women in STEM? Why don't we have programs to try to get more men in STEM? Because isn't that sexist to target one thing or the other? If the teacher just goes, that's misogynistic and that's patriarchy, goodbye, and ends the conversation, that would be unproductive on every end. I completely agree. Look at me giving an example. I came up with an example so easily, and Andy couldn't do that. This is his podcast too. Okay, Andy. Anyway, so let's say that that's the example of what's going on. If the teacher's in a position of wanting to educate, then that's a great opportunity to say to that student, okay, well, let's look at some reasons why. Let's look at some of the reasons why, historically there have been fewer women in STEM fields. Let's look at why this is. And that doesn't mean derail the entire lesson to go into it, but it could be something where you could even say to the student, like, hey, maybe we can do a little project where you can try writing up why you think it should be different. Maybe we can structure a class debate to see something like that. I think there are ways to go about facilitating the conversation. I don't think shutting it down by going, that's the patriarchy. I think that would be a really unproductive way to go about the discussion. But I think turning it into a way for discussion obviously without derailing. If this is like in the middle of calculus, it would be a little weird, right? But if it's relevant to the class discussion, having time, as a teacher, you should be building time into your lesson plans for there to be class discussion and there to be a way to further go into these topics. And that can be really difficult to facilitate. I get it, especially when it does come to topics that can be hard for a lot of people. I remember growing up and being in school and just learning about, women didn't have the right to vote till whenever. Like, that kind of hurts to learn. Like, it's true, so you have to learn it, but it's also just like, yeah, it wouldn't be fun to have a debate where someone has to debate against women's right to vote, right? Like, that would suck. So there's a way that you have to manage not making kids feel like shit, because that's not motivational for learning, while also being able to engage with multiple different ideas. It's not an easy balance to strike. Honestly, that's what teachers should be paid way more.
Those are things that people do when they cannot argue the point at hand, okay?
Okay. Kind of like how you're just accusing people of being emotional instead of engaging with anything specific. Is that what you're doing when you can't argue the point at hand, Mr. Andy?
Right.
Like when I'm sitting in a meeting and I'm talking to, let's say, another company, and I say this, and this, and then that guy...
I love how he almost had an example there. He's like, when I'm sitting in a meeting talking to a company, and I'm like, oh, finally, he's setting a scene, he's gonna have an example, and he's like, and I'm saying this, and this. Andy, why are you so vague?
Says, well, that, and that.
That, and that. Why even have a podcast if you're gonna be this vague?
We start to talk, and we engage, and we have conversations, and I don't really agree with everything this person wants to do, and he doesn't agree with everything I want to do. But at the end of the day, I don't turn around and say, well, just because you think that, you're a fucking idiot.
Right.
Okay, who said that in this interaction with the teacher and the student? The student said, I want to fight against wokeness in the school, and never defined what that meant. And then Andy made up this scenario about how a student says something about something and is never specific, and the teacher turns around and goes, that's racist, that's sexist, that's patriarchy. Did the teacher even really do that? What is happening? Am I just high? Am I just high?
Like,
right.
That's...
You're racist.
Yes. Like, when they go to name calling, you have to understand that you won. Mm-hmm. You win when they go to name calling.
A teacher has never name-called me, ever. And I was the student who was challenging shit. I was the one who was always raising my hand, like, but what about this? But what about this? But what if I'm gay? Like, that was just me in class all the time. I never got called any name. And I went to school, so I graduated high school in 2011.
Knowledge.
I remember being the kid who was, it was the 2004 election, and I'm in 6th grade. They bring in the little wheelie cart. Let's watch the George Bush, John Kerry debate. Oh, we're going to fast forward through the part about gay marriage because that's inappropriate for school, guys. And I'm just there like, no, it's not. And no teacher ever called me a name throughout any of that. And I've been on the other side of that too. I've been pretty open about this. When I was a teenager through early college, I was a hard capitalist. I was really into anti-business regulation type of shit. I was really into that. So I'd be in class class being like, okay, but like if we just don't regulate anything, wouldn't that be better? I was the one doing that, and no teacher ever called me a name. No teacher was like, wow, that must make you like a little conservative shitlord, right? Like, no, I've never been called any names by a teacher. In fact, when I've brought up other concepts, especially in college, and been like, so I don't understand this because wouldn't this work in this context, or wouldn't this be like this? No, now I'm being vague. Andy, you did this to me.
Can't attack what you say, they attack who's saying.
That's right.
That's it.
So like, dude, that's another thing we don't talk about enough is like, who fucking cares what they call you, bro?
Right.
Like 15 years ago when you were called a racist.
This is a totally made up situation. Who cares what they call you? Who called anyone anything?
Racist on the internet, it meant something. Like people would literally be like, damn, dude, I don't know if I want to fucking be friends with that dude.
Ain't fucking with DJ no more.
Yeah, right. Like, oh my God, you follow DJ? He's such a racist. Oh, I'm following him. Right. That's where it was in 2010. Now it's everybody who disagrees with fucking anything, especially if they're fucking white, is a racist.
Anyone who disagrees with anything is racist. So Andy's racist. That would make me racist. My dog's racist because he disagrees when I tell him he can't have any more snacks tonight. He says, I disagree. I'm going to go get into the snacks now. That makes him racist because anyone who disagrees with anything is racist. If you disagree with racism, you're also racist because that's disagreeing with anything. This doesn't make any sense. He's throwing around buzzwords the same way the quote unquote woke people do. He's like, oh, all they do is throw around racism and sexism. All Andy's doing is throwing around words like woke and then you're saying this and that. That's all he's doing. So this is the least productive I thought there was going to be at least something productive from this. This is a huge disappointment.
So fuck if I'm a racist. Okay, I'm a racist, but still on this point.
You're an idiot.
Yeah. like just own the shit they call you and just laugh about it. Because, dude, once you laugh about it, it loses its power. I know you think I'm a racist. I got it. Let's put that over here. Now back to the original question.
Exactly.
Okay, and that's how you beat these people in arguments.
Yeah.
Because they never have an answer. Ever, ever, ever.
Ever, ever, ever. That's a pretty big claim, Andy. Could you give an example of what we might be talking about in the first place? Because no, I don't think someone calling someone else racist means they never have an answer. If you get back to the point, maybe they do have an answer and just also thought you were racist. There's a million scenarios. You gotta be more specific. This is really frustrating.
The only reason they go to names, the only reason anyone goes to names is because they lost.
Not necessarily. I will say generally name calling's not a very good tactic when it comes to facilitating a productive discussion. I can agree on that. Nerd! But name calling doesn't mean you've lost necessarily. No, it doesn't mean that on its own. That's not the only reason. It's a little reductive.
Okay, and if you can engage people to a point where they call you names in public, and let's say there's 15 people watching, 3 of those motherfuckers are going to be like, damn, dude, you just schooled that lady.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's an important part too.
And that's
is that a r/that happened and then everybody clapped moment? 3 people are going to be like, you just schooled that lady. This has never happened. This has never happened. Oh my God. Andy's just making shit up in his head. Andy, more like Andy's nuts.
that helps people start to come around. So, dude, what's happening in society is that too many people, one, think that someone else is going to come in and do this for them. There's no law that's going to do this. This is a cultural revolution, guys.
Yeah. It's a cultural revolution. It's a cultural revolution, you guys.
This is not, we're riding in a horseback with fucking guns and like, that's not what this is. And that's the mistake that people are making.
The internet is not a big truck. The internet is a series of tubes.
Especially like the Patriot. You guys think that there's some sort of battle getting right. The battle's happening. You're just not in it.
Right.
And the battle right now is with fucking words and ideas. And if you don't open your mouth and resist those.
He's talking so much about resisting words and ideas, and he can't share any actual words and ideas of his own. Andy.
And I'm not talking about one time. I'm not talking about making a post one time. I'm talking about any fucking time.
Any fucking time!
That someone brings this shit around you. All right? You're at fucking Thanksgiving dinner and your fucking Aunt Mary says some dumb shit. You gotta...
I love how he almost gets to it. He makes another scenario. He sets the scene. You're at a Thanksgiving dinner. Okay, we're finally going to get an example. And Aunt Mary, and she says, what does she say? What does she say? Does she say, fuck the patriarchy? Is that what Aunt Mary's saying at Thanksgiving dinner? Is Aunt Mary saying, gay marriage is valid. I'm going to go kiss my wife. Is that what Mary's saying? What is she saying? She's saying some dumb fucking shit. Come on, Andy. Come on. This podcast is the stupidest thing I've ever listened to. And not because he's anti-wokeness or whatever. It's the stupidest thing because he can't articulate a fucking point. He's going on about how the woke people, whoever they are, can't articulate a fucking point, and he can't even articulate a point clear enough to tell me who those people are.
Joe Rogan can only do so much. If he listen, it's like I said on my Instagram post the other day. Knowing you're fat will not fix the problem of you being fat.
Okay, Andy. Knowing I'm fat will not fix.
So bringing awareness does not fix the problem. Posting on Instagram, that's part of it, right? Because
what is the actual, you still haven't defined what the problem is. This reminds me of watching WFAB when they keep talking about the drama. They never tell us what the drama is. Knowing the problem. What is the problem? Are you going to tell me, bud? What's the problem?
there's a lot of people, but bro, we're past the awareness stage. There's fucking, Joe Biden has a 1% approval rating.
Wait, what does Joe Biden have to do with any of this? What does Joe Biden have to do with any of this?
With people between 20 and 30 years old on both sides.
Uh-huh. Yeah, most leftists I know don't like Joe Biden either. A lot of them voted for him reluctantly as like a harm reduction thing because Trump's even worse. But I don't know. Bernie bros, what's up?
1%, bro.
1%,
Okay, you think
bro?
I would say that's a pretty good percentage of everybody else being ready for something else.
Yeah, right.
I agree, but what does that have to do at all with your teacher said something you don't agree? What is happening?
Okay. So now's the best opportunity to step the fuck up and fulfill your obligation as an American. If you love America, if you don't.
My obligation to do what? To tell my teacher that Joe Biden has a low approval rating? I want to see how this scenario could possibly play out. I feel like, I don't know if this is cult shit or what, but everyone's speaking a language that I don't know. That's what's going on here. There's some kind of like in-group signals that they have that I'm not picking up on. It's like when I've reacted to red pill stuff in the past. There's stuff that's unstated. There's stuff that isn't said that I'm supposed to be able to pick up on and I don't.
Love America? Get the fuck out.
Get the fuck out. Wait, you have to love America or get the fuck out? I thought we have freedom of thought in this country. I thought that you could criticize your own country. I thought was that supposed to be in the Constitution? Is that part of freedom of speech and the press and the right to protest the government? I didn't think we had to love America. Can't we want better for America? Can't we do what?
That's it. Canada is the exact opposite of what America is about at this.
I don't think Canada is the exact opposite of America. Oh my god, Canada is wildly similar. Canada and the US are wildly similar. They have some key differences. There's some key differences. There's some things I like better here. There's some things I would like better there. There's some key differences. But as far as cultures go, language goes, as far as how things are debated over certain things, the certain types of contentions, Canada and the US are very similar culturally. But okay.
At this point in time, and all you motherfuckers that don't like freedom and shit, you are free to go there.
What way does Canada not have freedom? Canada's very similar to the US.
No, this shit that they're doing in California that's ruining the Canada's doing the whole thing.
Wait, California's in the US. He's like, now the shit they're doing in California, it's just like Canada, and Canada's the opposite of the US, so California's the opposite of the US, even though California's in the US. This is so funny.
So like, if you are still advocating for this shit, move to Canada, bro.
Move to Canada, bro. Good advice, bud.
You got a fucking ocean up there too.
Right.
Okay? Like,
So,
yeah, just go up there.
Maples.
Yeah, anyone who doesn't like anything should move. It's not like we have the right to criticize and protest the government baked into our constitution so that we can try to make our country better. It's not like you should try to make the country you live in better. No, you should just leave and let the country crumble around you if you hate it. What the fuck?
Sir.
Like, those motherfuckers are fucking communists full force right now.
Canada's not communist. What does he think communism is? What does he think communism is? Where are anyone Canadian communists?
Oh yeah.
So, and that's the other thing. People are like, "Oh, dude, communist is on the is almost hit." No, dude,
It's
communist is here.
What? Bro, hold on. Just for Andy's sake. So, just for Andy's sake, let's read an agreed upon definition of communism. Communism is a far-left philosophical, social, political, and economic ideology and movement whose goal is the establishment of a communist society, namely a socio-economic order based on the idea of common ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange, allocating products to everyone in the society. Is that what we have in the US or in Canada? No. Where's the common ownership of all the means of production? What we have is capitalism. That's the system where people who start the business own the business and then they employ workers who are not legally guaranteed to have an ownership stake in the business. That's capitalism. This is communism. We don't have that here. Whether we should have that here is a debate we can have. But we don't. To say we do right now is a lie. You are lying. You are lying, Mr. Andy. Mr. Real AF, you are lying!
They just never fucking stopped calling it freedom. And they slid it in under the name of freedom. We've been living
We just slipped a little communist in. Just slide the communist in. Slide it up in your butthole.
in pretend freedom.
Pretend
Okay?
freedom.
Real American freedom, that is not what we've been having. We've been having bullshit freedom. And not just
Bullshit freedom. Andy, are you going to tell me how you think we have communism here? What is going on?
during Biden. It's been going on for a long time.
It's real. The only other thing too I would add for this high school student is when you are going to challenge those things, make sure you know what you're talking about and have your shit have substance and, you know, provided by fucking backed by data and
Yeah,
fucking,
bro. It's like we were talking in the car ride today.
I'm glad the other guy who's co-hosting with Andy brought that up, because Andy didn't even bring that up. He's just like, dude, you gotta go to that teacher. You gotta tell them they're wrong. You gotta stand up. You gotta resist. You gotta fight your fucking freedoms. Fight the communism, dude. Fight the wokeness. And the other dude's like, pops in and is like, okay, but one other thing. Make sure that what you're saying is backed up by data and that you have your sources ready. Shout out to the other dude.
Remember what I said in the car ride today where I was like, dude, there's probably 100 people in front of us that we can see. So we're sitting in traffic. We're sitting in traffic. DJ's driving. I'm riding. And I'm like, man, there's probably, 100 people in front of us here that we can see? I bet you that if we sat down and talked to them about all the data and all the shit going on in the world, and all the shit we talk about, I bet there's only one or two that could actually even keep up, because they have no clue of what's going on.
Well, I'm not convinced you have any clue what's going on, because you've given zero specific examples. You've just complained about vague abstract concepts the whole time. Andy's like, he's on the right track. Not really. Andy's not on any track. Andy's like out in outer space right now, just like being an old man yelling at a cloud.
Bro, Fox News is just walking you into communism. You don't fucking get it, bro.
Wait, how is Fox News walking us into... I really want to know how he says Fox News is walking into communism. You don't even fucking get it, bro. That's the best quote I've ever heard in my life.
All they do is the same shit all the conservative influencers
All they do...
They go like this.
All they do is McDonald's, charge they phone, twerk. Eat hot chip and lie.
Holy shit, did you see what happened today? Buy that shirt over there.
Right.
Holy shit, did you see what happened today again? Man.
America First sale.
Yeah,
Here we go.
like, bro, that's not solving anything.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Like, just screaming about the shit is not solving anything, bro.
No.
We have
But that's all you've done this whole podcast is just scream about
to
it.
fucking resist at every point. And the way you get
Resist what?
comfortable resisting at every point is by actually doing some research into what the fuck is going on. And those conspiracy people that you think are totally fucked and like crazy and no, those people have just realized.
Everyone who's a conspiracy theorist, they're the true woke ones. They're truly awoken. Flat earthers, they know what's up. The earth is flat. The Illuminati, dude, they know what's up.
The fucking the level of corruption there actually is.
Oh, I agree that there's a ton of corruption going on. But I think it's a little weird to say all the conspiracy theorists, they're the ones who know what's up, dude.
Now, they might not know exactly what's going to happen. They might not be perfect. But at the heart of the matter, they have understood that these institutions and these concepts that we believed were good for us are inherently bad for us. And they can show you and point you in a lot of different directions that show these things. Dude, you don't know your history because they didn't teach you history, because if you knew your history, you would be much harder to go along with the shit they're trying.
Oh, wait, can you give me an example of a piece of history they didn't teach us? Because isn't that one of the things? It's like people keep calling it too woke to teach accurate representations of what happened in history. Because, spoiler alert, in history, sometimes your own country is the bad guy. That happens. Especially in the US, because we're a very big country who's very powerful and has done some shitty things. And sometimes your country has to be the bad guy when you learn accurate history. So a lot of times it's the anti-wokeness in school people who are saying, don't teach these parts of history. Don't teach the fact that the founding fathers, a lot of them were slave owners who abused women. Don't teach that. Just teach they had a vision for the country, right? So there's a lot of that going on. I completely agree that we need to teach full and accurate history. I'd like to know if Andy could give me a list of everything he thinks they're leaving out.
To do now. You have to understand this. You weren't there 100 years ago. You don't know what happened 100 years ago. You are only told a story, and who are you told a story by?
Wait, so we have to learn our history, but we can't trust whoever's telling it to us, okay? I'd like to know, what is Andy's solution other than to just resist and scream resist at people?
We have to start thinking about where this information is coming from, who's putting this information out, and what is the purpose of this information? Yeah. Is this information meant to inform, or is this information meant to push an agenda or a way of thinking or be in line with something? You know, I saw a commercial on TV where they were talking about the metaverse, and it was like a metaverse PSA, like the metaverse is so awesome. And it showed these kids, and it's like, they're standing in front of you know, this Greek or this Roman building, right, or Greek building, and they're like, you know, now you can hear what Socrates' conversation actually fucking sounded like, and it shows like them in this virtual world with like the philosophers there talking, and you know, everybody's thinking, oh, that's so cool, and then you know what I think when I watch it? This is how they're going to rewrite history.
I was hoping for a lot more from Andy Frisella, I'll be honest. I was hoping that he would have gone more into the specifics of what he meant. I don't know if maybe he was too afraid to specifically say what he meant for real there, but I was hoping he'd go into a little more of what he meant in the specific episode, because listening to this one on its own, I'm like, I feel like I've missed out on a prior conversation that probably happened. But I'm curious to know all your guys' thoughts in the comments below. I will see you guys again on Friday for another new video, but in the meantime, keep on supporting small businesses and not First Phorm, because it might be an MLM and also this guy's running it. Bye!
Get you some nuts.
There was lots of memes.
Makes me wonder if I should take up lesbianism.
Chicago. You guys asked for it.